guest studio today is Mabel. She identifies herself as Chola. It's a person who is Native American and multiracial. Mabel is an artist and activist who works focused on decolonization and the abolition of prison industrial complex. She joins us tonight. Talk to us about the tensions surrounding the Columbus statue in South Philadelphia. Welcome, Mabel.
Hi, hello.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, thank you as well for inviting.
Now, over 32 years ago, you migrated to the United States. Where did you migrate from?
From the country Chile of South America. The native or indigenous name would be Gulumapu, and particularly from the city of Alimapu, which is the central region of Chile.
Awesome. Well, first, I want to say thank you for your service. I see that you're the co founder of the Indigenous Peoples Day Philadelphia. Tell us a little bit about that.
We started in 2017, a group of native from various different regions from the Caribbean, from this North America, as well from Central America. And our focus was to figure out how to uplift the voices of the Lenni Lenape tribes that are here in the Lenapehoking, as well across the different parts of the United States, because they're also in a diaspora, as well as bridging the gap about the history about the indigenous Caribbeans, particularly the Arawaks or Taino descent, who live here in New York, because a lot of people from the Caribbean, in particular of like Boricuas and Puerto Ricanos, are here. It's like one of the largest. They have one of the largest, populations who lives within the United States. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, we thank you, and I'm sure they appreciate the support and the service and all that you guys are doing for that. Now, let's get to the heart of this. Could you give us a little bit of context in regard to the tension surrounding the Columbus statue in South Philadelphia?
Um, well, my understanding that first of all that this long history about the tension with Christopher Columbus is not just particular to the city of Philadelphia. It's something that has been going on across the entire country. In 1992, the celebration of from one side, it was a celebration of the discovery of the Americas. Counter to that, there was an indigenous uprising, not only to the United States, but all across the continent, North and South America, to sort of demystify the history of that narrative that has been perpetrated and mistakenly, I would say, used against indigenous communities, First Nations, pueblos originarios. So started also here in the United States, in various cities, in Berkeley, Oakland, and the East Coast, Colorado, and then also like in South Dakota, they started instituting like Native American Day instead of Columbus. And so it has been a long history of like trying to replace that legacy. And along with that has been about removing the Christopher Columbus monument. So now we're in 2020, and we're like in this moment of I would say uprising in some level, because because of the Black Lives Matter, brought attention not only to settlers' monuments, but also from the Confederacy. So that also, I would say, gave impetus for the Native community to also continue this discourse, and that's why you see monuments of Christopher Columbus being teared down across different regions of the country. So now, why Marconi? Well, there's like two monuments that represents Christopher Columbus. One at the Marconi, and also at the Penn's Landing. as well as there's like controversial issues around like the history of the boulevard. That part of it was recall as Columbus, and then the other part is Delaware, and that's like a long, you know, battle that has been going on with the Native American and within like the Italian American community, who is has a prominent presence in political presence also of, you know, in the city. So now why Marconi? Well, people also Italian Americans who are aware of the myth of Christopher Columbus and who are also interested in changing that are standing up, as well as the African American community and other communities who are, you know, I would say are standing up with Native American to, you know, address this historical moment that not only impacted the Taino and the Boricuas in significant ways, you know, because they instituted, you know, like sex trafficking, enslavement of the indigenous communities, but it also ties to the history of the transatlantic later, as you know, as we know our history of the Americas. Um, so we have to pay attention to that part of our history that is oftentimes overlooked. And Philadelphia, by the way, something I didn't mention, but we're in Lenapehoking, part of Lenapehoking, which is Lenape territory. And even the Lenape, we have to make a correlation, you know, a connection between how they were removed from the city, you know, or this territory, um, all the way to the west. Even though that there's certain, you know, there was some kind of relationship with a Penn, William Penn, but that is, I would say, is contested because it's like it's a history that there was a lot of misunderstandings, and definitely the territory, from the perspective of William Penn and their family, was to actually purchase the territory, but there's historical documents that that testifies that it was on the contrary. There was a lot of these, you know, kind of money to actually take the land of the Lenape, and it became what became historically the walking purchase, you know, walking purchase of that period. So we have to think about all of that context to why now we're kind of like demanding that these kinds of monuments need to be tear down, but also think about it, how we can not only hide it, that history. I hope that the art commission and the city will stand on figure out how to bring Native American history that also involve this narrative of this, you know, all the way up to the present, because people need to know that there's living, breathing people like myself and other people who are Native and who were mistakenly named as Indios. Um, of course, in the North, Indios has been a sense of pride or Indian, even across the it is a derogatory, and because it erases the who as people as cultural. No? It's not just how we look, but it's also our culture, it's our languages. And like myself, and this is why I also relate to the Lenape and also the Tainos, is because we come from territories impacted very heavily by the invasion of the European. In the case of my country, was the Spanish, also the Spanish for the Boricuas, and also for the Lenape was the English, Dutch, and then so on, you know. And then then we have to think about it, how settled colonialism took place, and
awesome.
This is where we're at.
That was a great history lesson. So because everybody don't understand, everybody don't get it, can you just kind of give us an image that, or just a thought that when you see the statue, what are we, what are you thinking? What do the people think? Those, especially those who are saying this is controversial. What are some of the thoughts or things that they're dealing with or going through, just to kind of give people an understanding or a reflection of what the tension's about?
Um, well, I would say across the board of within Native communities, not only within the North, but also, people from Mexico, from Central America, all the way to the South. Um, Christopher Columbus Monument represents the our genocide, and not only physically, but also culturally. So we have to also grasp that we were kind of like part of ourselves were taken away, like let's say language, for example, is so important. Now there's a indigenous survival and there's indigenous, you know, kind of like pride that takes a lot of, I would say work, to preserve because we're contrary, we live already in this mixed society, the other part of it is that it represents this doctrine of discovery, and which is really like how Christians of the time saw our territory as a place where if they were not Christians, they can take it over. So they didn't see us also as humans. So this is very important, and that comes across in different way in the history, and even erases Native American history because of the elevations of how Christopher Columbus narrative elevates it, and on top of the indigenous erasure, which is a huge problem in the United States. Just to think about it, that about 80 to 90% of the American population knows little to nothing about Native American history of this area, much less about Mexico, Canada, and the Caribbean. So we are dealing with like a systemic issue, which is institutional racism, and at all levels.
Now, as far as the first question is that when you want to remove something, what do you replace it with? Have you guys had that conversation or those suggestions already ready when they say, okay, we're going to take this down, but what do you want to replace it with? What are some of the ideas that are floating around?
At least for the native communities here, Lenape, Taínos, Mexicas. I think there's like there's two tracks. One is definitely we need to see more representation of the Lenape history, both in the past and the present. Um, Definitely also the Taino community and the indigenous Caribbeans, also there needs to be some representation, and also to mend the history, because even within the North America, when we are talking about Indigenous Peoples Day, sometimes the Taino community or the presence of the Taino is also not known, and then and definitely we have to think about it like how this is more painful, but it's like how slavery or enslavement, of our people across the continent also connects to the African American community. So there are opportunity for conversations for different communities to decide what would that look like. Definitely, we are not, as a community, I don't think we're there yet. So it will take some time for the Art Commission, the city, and even other public institutions and nonprofits sector to and grassroots to have that kind of like more in-depth conversations about what would that look like, and but I know that the Art Commission and the Historical Commission, where we're kind of thinking about some kind of plate there, but even that, what sort of history can be represented when the Italian American also is seeking to have a better representation of their heritage. It's also, it's something that it's going to be important to discuss, because definitely nobody wants to replace anyone, but it's also important to understand that we're in context of white supremacy and in context of indigenous erasure, especially in the city, that there's very no representation of Native American other than just stereotypes. We have to think about it, how generous others are going to have to be in order to give a space for Native voices.
before we go, there might be someone who's watching that says, you know what, I want to become a part of the movement. I want to get involved. How would they do that?
Uh, so currently we have a Facebook page. You can look it up as Indigenous Peoples Day Philly, and you can sign up to that. We also have a website, which is ipdphilly.org. We're every year since 2017, we've been doing an event, so people sign up to that event, and it's going to come up. We're going to organize an online event, so it's going to be modest in comparison to other years, but definitely an opportunity for people to learn and also to follow us. Uh-huh.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. Well, that's all we have for this episode of PhillyCAM Voices. Thank you for joining us. You can also watch the show on YouTube and Roku and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.